Your presence is heaven.
Welcome back, folks, to another exciting lesson. My name is Bruce, and I am ready to bring you this lesson entitled, Jesus Heals a Centurion Servant, and it comes from Luke chapter 7, verses 1 through 10. The time of writing is AD 28. The place is Capernaum. And the golden text is, when Jesus heard these things, he said unto the people that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And that comes from Luke 7 and 9. Please forgive my voice. It's coming back. Dealt with a little illness on last week. So just please forgive my voice as it's fading in and out a little bit. But as we think about this lesson today, folks, as I said in the opening, I'm excited about it because, again, you see healing faith. You know, you see humility on the part of one of our main character in the lesson today. You see a level of faith that has not been seen. At least Jesus hadn't seen it to that point in his ministry, and he's gonna respond, if you will, toward the end of our lesson. And so one of the things that I love about this lesson is that the fact that the centurion, the main character, well, he didn't have a personal relationship, if you will, with Jesus. He heard about Jesus, and from he was able to develop enough faith for him to send out a request, and we'll get into that as we get into the lesson. And as we begin, faith does not wait for visible results. Faith does not look at or get preoccupied by the visible circumstances around us. Faith looks at the one who bids us put our trust in him and is faithful to carry out his promises. Again, sometimes you may not understand, or sometimes it may not look good, but your faith is not supposed to waver, especially those that have been on this Christian walk for a while. Your faith should be strong because you've gone through different tests and you've had different challenges in your lifetime, and your faith should be on a different level compared to someone who is just entering into the faith or entering into the walk with the Lord. And one thing that is truly amazing to see, again, is the fact that the main character is a Gentile, again, who didn't grow up, wasn't a part of the tribe of Israel, but his faith, as you're going to see as we get through the lesson, his faith far surpassed those who had the scriptures, those who Jesus came to first to preach or to minister to. So today's lesson reminds us of the importance of faith when praying for healing and helps us have a clearer concept of how to pray for sick people. And so before we really get into it, and it is important to note, folks, that sometimes, and again, we've all had sick loved ones. We've all went to God in prayer about someone that was dealing with some specific, health challenge. And sometimes we didn't get the answer that we want, or sometimes the person still ended up going back home to be with the Lord. And sometimes we get a little frustrated, or we get angry, or we get upset. But what we have to realize is that really, ultimately, this all falls into his will. And if it's his will for that person to be healed, or for that person to come out of that situation, then they will do so. But again, sometimes the answer may not be yes, the answer may be wait, or the answer may just be no. As we look at our aim for today, the facts, we want to understand that the Lord is able to heal people when he chooses to do so. And again, as I just said, when he chooses to do so, and it's not for us to get angry if our specific loved one that we pray for, that we beseech God for, ends up dying, and then you see someone else, their loved one, they went to prayer, and then their loved one made it out to the other side. So again, don't get frustrated or don't get upset if again, the Lord should decide to call your loved one home. Our principle today is to recognize the importance of faith and God's will when praying for healing. Again, let your will be done, God. So as you're praying to him, it's not what you want. Yes, ultimately you want your loved one, your friend, or whoever you're going to God for, you want them to be restored. But ultimately our main prayer should be for God's will to be done in not just our lives, but in the lives of our friends and family, but in the entire world. Let God's will be done in this world. As we look at the application, we want to pray for people's physical needs with full confidence that the Lord can heal. I'm going to say that again. We want to pray for people's physical needs with full confidence that the Lord can heal. So you know, regardless of whether or not if he does it or not, you know that he can accomplish what you are requesting of him. And so let's look at the basic duties or the basic role of a centurion. The centurion was an officer in charge of the basic unit of 100 soldiers. He was responsible for disciplining the ranks, drilling the troops, inspecting armaments, and providing clothing and food and shelter for his men. So obviously this would obviously make him very important and vital to the men that he was commanding, which would also make them extremely loyal to him if they're looking to him for clothing, food, and shelter, and making sure that their weapons are in top shape. He oversaw scourging, he oversaw scourging. And even executions. A centurion was in charge of Christ's scourging and crucifixion. A centurion had to confirm that Jesus was actually dead. So again, you've seen a centurion in different places in Scripture. Now let's look at some other places where we saw centurions mentioned in the New Testament. The very first Gentile to approach Jesus during his ministry was the centurion in today's lesson text. The first Gentile to testify that Jesus is the Son of God was a centurion, having witnessed the crucifixion events. He said, "Truly, this man was the Son of God." And that comes from Mark chapter 15, verse 39. The first Gentile convert to Christianity mentioned in Acts was the centurion Cornelius, who also had a positive reputation within the Jewish community. We're also going to see that. I didn't get into that as we introduced the lesson, but we're going to see how this centurion, he treated them, or he acted or conducted himself in a manner that wasn't like the other centurions of that time. And it also is important to note, folks, that at this point, as Jesus is walking, as Jesus is on the scene, they had been under Roman authority for about 90 some odd years. So, you know, they had the Roman influence over their lives, if you will, for almost 100 years at this point. So as we look at a strategic move which covers Luke 7:1, and as we look at verse 1, now when he had ended all his sayings in the audience of the people, he entered into Capernaum. And so we're going to get into this as we get into our lesson text, but there was a lot Jesus did preceding this particular request, this particular lesson. And when we get into it, you're going to see, yeah, I can understand why he was now going into this city that he was familiar with, that was essentially his home base, if you will, the city that he would expand his ministry to kind of get like a refresh, a recharge, if you will, kind of unwind from such a heavy workload. And as we get into it, in both of his books, Luke emphasized that Gentiles as well as Jews have been included in the family of faith. So again, in Luke's books, you're seeing again how there was always a plan for the Gentile people as well. Excuse me. It was in fact the Gentile Theophilus, who was the recipient of these books, and to whom Luke wanted to give a clear understanding of this truth. It was Luke who recorded the Song of Simeon, in which he referred to the extension of salvation to the Gentiles, and that came from Luke 2:12 29 through 32. And it was Luke who recorded in great detail the conversion of the centurion Cornelius in Acts 10, who we've already discussed. Jesus had gone to the mountain to pray, and on the next day he chose his 12 disciples. Upon returning down from the mountain, he preached and healed many people. He presented the Beatitudes and explained what kind of behavior those in the kingdom should exhibit in their lives. He then spoke two parables, to illustrate some truths about that kingdom. And as we look at question number 1, in which city was Jesus when he received a special request and a special and unusual request for healing? And we've already answered it. It was Capernaum. Excuse me. I'm going to get it right before the end of the lesson. But Capernaum. And again, like I said, Capernaum was something like a home base for Jesus and a place from which he would expand his ministry. It was also located on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee and was the largest city surrounding that body of water. So again, this was a large city, if you will. This was a city that was full of trade. Obviously, being close to a body of water, you would have had goods coming in and out. Also, again, because of its strategic value, you're going to see the Romans occupying it because of, again, the wealth that was produced in this city. And so as we move into verse 2 and verse 3, which are under the subtitle critical need, and as we look at verse 2, and a certain centurion's servant who was dear unto him was sick and ready to die. And so we get right into the issue at hand. And the issue at hand was there was a centurion who had a different kind of relationship with his servant than other centurions. I've already mentioned that he kind of treated the Jewish people differently than other previous centurions. And he had a different relationship with his own personal servant, his slave, if you will. In Roman custom, master had the right to do whatever he wanted to do with his servant or slave. If the servant was too sick to serve and the master deemed necessary to kill said servant or slave, then there was no law that forbade that. And so you see in this, again, this servant was dear to him, right? You know, this wasn't just any old servant. This wasn't just any old person working in his home. This person was dear to him. That means he cared for him deeply. And again, sick and was ready to die. So again, we're going to get into it as we get into the breakdown. But Matthew tells us what he was in fact inflicted with. As we move down into verse 3, and when he heard of Jesus, he sent unto him the elders of the Jews, beseeching him that he would come and heal his servant. So again, as I said, scriptures doesn't say that he personally sat in one of Jesus's teachings or he sat in one of Jesus's sermons. It said he heard about him. He heard about the miracles. He heard about the things that he was doing. And again, as a centurion, he wouldn't have been worth a thing if he didn't gather intelligence about the comings and goings of the city that he was in charge of. So obviously he would have heard about the things that Jesus was doing. And once those things entered his hearing, well, he didn't forsake them. He didn't push them to the side as just, normal, Jewish rhetoric or whatever. He believed, and he believed enough that his sick friend, who was in fact dying, and despite his influence and despite the power that he wielded, nothing was able to help him. There was nothing and no one that was able to bring him back from death's door. And so when he heard Jesus was in town, well, he went to the Jewish leaders. And it's very interesting to note, folks, that there was an animosity between the Romans and Jews at this time. Again, if you are, a people who have an occupying force or a occupying set of people in your land, essentially governing the way you live, well, you're not going to have the best relationship with those people. But in fact, because of the respect that this particular centurion showed to the Jewish people, and the things that he did, and we'll get into that later in the lesson. Well, you see that he can go to these Jewish leaders and say, listen, you guys would be doing me a solid, if you all would go to Jesus and beseech him. Don't just ask him, but I really need you all to really let him know how dear this man is to me, and how much I'd like to see him restored. And so as we get into the critical need, again, as I said, question number 2 asks, what was unique about the centurion's attitude toward his servant? And we've already mentioned it. This servant was dear unto him. And so as we look at this particular centurion, exhibited a concern for his servant that many centurions would not have shown. Servants were generally considered expendable and easily replaced. So again, one gets sick, I'll just get rid of him and get another one. This centurion, however, had a genuine heart of concern for his servant and did not view him as someone who could be easily tossed aside and replaced. Again, and you see his character. You see the character of this centurion, the fact that he had the ability to say, well, I don't have time to deal with this. Go ahead on and put him out to pasture and bring me someone else. He's like, no, let me do everything that I can to, again, as I said, to restore you back to full health. Luke specifically recorded that this servant was dear, highly valued to his master, and was sick to the point of death. There is a parallel account, as I mentioned earlier, in Matthew 8, 5 through 13, where it is recorded that the servant was sick with palsy and terribly tormented by the disease. Anybody who has had a loved one deal with any form of palsy understands how debilitating that disease is. As we look at question number 3, who brought the centurion's request to Jesus? Again, we've pretty much already answered it. And it was, as Matthew said, again, there is a parallel account of this particular story. Matthew said it was the centurion who personally came to Jesus, while Luke said it was the Jewish elders on his behalf. Matthew apparently simplified the story by making his representatives equivalent to the centurion himself. We'll get into that more when we get later on in the lesson, and I can kind of explain why or how Matthew could come to that realization. But ultimately, the centurion did not, again, and we'll get into that later, his humility would not allow for him to go or send someone else. He sent the Jewish leaders for him to show in his thinking, believing that, well, he would probably be more receptive to his countrymen, to fellow Israelites, versus a Roman who, again, as I've said, they've been occupying Israel for over 90 years. And so the elders were sent by the centurion. As soon as he heard Jesus was in town, the situation was serious, and the centurion decides to take action. That's important right there, folks, if we can just take a pause for a minute. It's one thing to have faith, but it's another thing to put that faith into action. He believed the things that he heard about Jesus, that he had the ability to heal, that he was performing miracles, but he didn't just sit and say, well, if he passes by, then I'll shout for him, or if he comes by, I'll call for him. He put foot to action, if you will, by sending those elders out to, again, beseech Jesus. So again, he decides to take action. He had heard about Jesus. He heard about Jesus' ministry, including, given the nature of the request, miraculous works like those in Luke 4:31 through 44, chapter 4, and verses 31 through 44, and chapter 5, verses 12 through 26. But as a Gentile, the centurion may have been hesitant about asking a Jewish teacher for aid. Again, we'll get into that as we get into the lesson, but just know, folks, that this centurion, despite his position, was extremely humble in the face of God, in the face of God in flesh. Some think the elders were probably civil leaders as opposed to religious ones, partly because of the kinds of things they appreciated about the centurion. Instead of the unusual animosity, there was genuine camaraderie and a high degree of respect between them. The elders came to earnestly beseech Jesus to respond to this man's need. Although the centurion did not go to Jesus personally, he still had great faith that the Lord could heal his servant. His love for his servant, his fear of God, his respect for the Jews, and his generosity to them all speak to the fact that he was an exception to the rule when it came to the Roman soldiers of the day. And so as we look at our very first practical point, which covers 1, 2, 3, we are blessed. We are blessed to have people to intercede for us before the Lord. I'm going to say it again. We are blessed to have people to intercede for us before the Lord. Listen, that means that someone cares about you. You know, when someone thinks enough about you to go to the Lord in prayer for you in the situation that you're in, for you to receive some type of restoration, for you to be healed from whatever sickness, disease, or to be brought back from death's door. Again, that's big. At some point, we all had someone praying for us. When we were in the world, somebody was praying to God nightly, daily, for us to come to the light. So again, it is truly a blessing to have people that will go before the Lord in prayer on our behalf. And I pray that you are also going to the Lord on the behalf of your friends and family, co-workers, and those people that you encounter in the streets, in the marketplaces, or wherever. If you hear of a prayer need, that you will go to the Lord and pray for that specific need. As we look at intercessory requests, which covers verses 4 and 5, and as we look at verse 4, and when they came to Jesus, they besought him instantly, saying, that he was worthy for whom he should do this. So again, they didn't dilly-dally. Another one of those throwback words for you all. They went. They didn't question, oh man, well, or they didn't say, well, listen, if we do this for you, you got to do something for us. They respected him enough that when he put in the request, they went and besought him instantly. Again, like I said, they didn't waste time. They didn't beat around the bush. They went instantly. And again, not beating around the bush, they besought him earnestly, saying, this man is worthy. This man is worthy. The thing that we're asking you to do for this particular man, this man, of all people, of all people, of all of the Gentiles that you may have encountered, this man here is truly worthy of the thing that we're asking you to do. And verse 5, and they said, for he loveth our nation, and he have built us a synagogue. So again, they're just further explaining to Jesus, listen, he cares about us enough. He respects us enough that he didn't force Roman culture on them, right? He didn't tell them, all right, well, you guys are under Rome's authority, so, you all need to do what the Romans do. He kind of allowed them to go about their daily lives. He allowed them to continue in their religious practice, so much so that he commissioned a synagogue for them to be built. So again, that's just showing, again, his character, his respect for them, the fact that, he doesn't want to be heavy-handed. I got to live here too. So, rather me treating them with contempt, rather, me and my soldiers, ordering them around, taking what we want. No, we're going to treat them with respect. And it's important to note, folks, that because he did that, because he was respectful, because he showed kindness, they will in fact go and do what he asked to do, and not hesitate to do so. So again, as we look at the intercessory request, the Jewish leaders wasted no time presenting their request to Jesus. They besought him instantly. The Greek word for besought is parakaleo, meaning to draw near in order to implore. The English word implore signifies begging and pleading earnestly with someone to do something. So again, that just goes back to, again, the respect that they had for him, that they would go and beg, pleading with Jesus for him to save not another Israelite, not someone of status or rank, but to save a slave. Again, we're going to see in a practical point, but how you treat people matters. The elders were urging Jesus to respond to their request, not merely mentioning a need they were aware of. So this was not simply, oh, hey, listen, Jesus, if you got time, we know of someone that is sick. Listen, that's not a big deal, but if you would, if you can you take care of this? No, they went and earnestly, this was, again, they were begging. And again, these were not just lay people of the city. These were leaders, regardless of whether or not they were religious or civil, they were regarded as leaders. And here they were on the behalf of a Roman, begging and pleading begging and pleading Jesus to honor this man's request. As we look at question number 4, what explanation did the Jewish leaders give for wanting Jesus to respond to their request? And again, as we've said earlier, their high regard for the centurion was displayed in their explanation that this man was worthy of receiving Jesus' help. They explained further that he had shown genuine love for the Jewish nation, especially in having built them a synagogue. So again, he even cared about them continuing on in their form of worship. An interesting change was suddenly taking place in Luke's gospel. Up to this point, Jesus had been portrayed as dealing exclusively with the Jews, but now he is shown beginning to pay attention to the Gentiles. Several things stand out in this passage. The main characters in this event are the Gentile centurion, not the Jewish elders who were not normally supportive of Jesus, and a slave who in most cases would have been viewed as nothing but a piece of property. Luke was giving Theophilus a broader perspective. Again, he doesn't even really mention what Jesus says, in relation to him giving that him healing the servant. He's really showing, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but he's showing the attitudes of the different people. As we look at question number 5, what was Luke seeming to emphasize more than the miracle? And again, I ran ahead, but what seems to be the most important to Luke at this point were the attitudes being displayed. A miracle was coming, but it is mentioned only briefly in Luke 10. Here we are seeing the attributes of the centurion towards Jesus and later toward his authority. That's also important. Again, the centurion, he was in fact a leader himself. Even though he was under someone else's authority, he was in fact given leeway to do whatever he needed to do to conduct daily business in that city. And yet we're going to see his humility in the face of God in flesh. Healing faith always begins with reverence and respect for God. We must understand that we have no right to demand anything of God. We must make our requests in light of the knowledge of God's goodness and grace, and willingly leave the final answer up to him, as I said earlier. Listen, sometimes you've gone to God about a situation and prayed for someone to get healing. And God simply said, no, it's time for them to come home. You just have to understand that he can do it if it is his will to do so. Again, as we look at practical point number 2, which covers verses 4 and 5, and I love this practical point because, again, this speaks to treating people the right way, treating people the way you want to be treated, because kindness, generosity, and respect can overcome nearly any human barrier. I'm going to say it again. Kindness, generosity, and respect can overcome nearly any human barrier. Listen, if you just treat people if you just give them the respect that they're due, you'll see that barriers will melt like a piece of ice in the Florida sun. People are going to be more receptive when you come to them if you treat them and talk to them like they're a person, instead of treating them like a child. If you're talking about another adult, or even in the case of children, you treat them like a person. You don't treat them, like they're nothing, and talk to them like they're nothing. Because if you do respond to people like that, well, guess what? Well, that barrier will be as tall as the Eiffel Tower, and you'll never be able to get it to come down. So again, treat people the way you want to be treated, and you'll find that those walls will come down. As we move on into verse 6 and we look at humble recognition, and verse 6, then Jesus went with them, and when he was now not far from the house, the centurion sent friends to him, saying unto him, Lord, trouble not thyself, for I am not worthy that thou shouldest enter under my roof. So, after all that, right, he went through the hassle of going to these leaders and asking them, hey, listen, Jesus is in town. I need you guys to go to him. I need you guys to beseech him. I need you guys, I need this done. I love this guy. He's very dear to me. I don't want to see him die. I don't want to see him suffer. I need you all, please go do this for me. And then all of a sudden, he's like, holy crow, whoa. What was I thinking? I'm not worthy of him. I'm not worthy of Jesus coming to my house. I'm not worthy to be in his presence, have him under my roof. Listen, guys, I need you all to go for me. I've already sent the leaders. I need you all to go. He sent his own personal friends this time to say, oh, hold on. He's not worthy. He's not worthy for you to trouble yourself. And we can get into it right now. Again, we know how, or for those of you that are unfamiliar, the Jews really look down upon Gentiles. There's really no other way to put it, and to involve yourself with a Gentile, to go into a Gentile's house, well, that will cause a set of problems. And potentially the centurion recognized that and thought to himself again, or one or two, or one of several reasons could have happened. One, he could have said, well, I don't want Jesus to deal with that. I don't want him to have to deal with these people that are going to come after him because he had the audacity to come into my home, Or again, the fact that I know who you are, even though I've not been in your presence. I've not sat under your ministry, but I know who you are. And I know before you even come that I'm not worthy. No, I'm not worthy. And again, so as we look at humble recognition, right off the bat, question number 6 asks us, what message came to Jesus as he was nearing the centurion's home, and who brought it to him? And so Jesus was already near the centurion's home, as we had already said, when the Romans sent some friends with another message. Was he having second thoughts about what he asked for? Was he embarrassed that he had been so presumptuous to ask Jesus to come to his house? After all, Jews were not allowed to enter the homes of Gentiles. The teaching was that this will defile them. Whatever his reason, The centurion showed genuine respect. And ultimately, folks, that's what I want you to understand. He showed genuine respect for Jesus and requesting that he not enter his house. That wasn't his faith. His faith wasn't wavering at that point, right? His faith was still strong. He's just recognizing, I'm not worthy. And ultimately, if we parallel to us today, we find, we're not worthy. Before we came to the Lord, before we answered the call, before we said the sinner's prayer, we were enemies. We were definitely covered in sin. So we were enemies. So again, this centurion is recognizing, yeah, man, I don't, I'm not worthy enough. I'm not worthy enough. And we'll get into what he asked, what his next request was going to be. His request also revealed his faith coupled with real humility. Again, his request also revealed his faith coupled with real humility. As I said earlier, I mean, he is a man of status. This is not just anybody. He is an officer of high rank. He's not a lowly ranked officer. So for him, again, Romans didn't show that level of humility to anybody, let alone, to people that they were, over. The elder said he was, and I picked this up as I was doing research for this lesson, and it truly blessed me, and I hope it blesses you all. The elder said he was worthy. He said he was not worthy. They praised him for building a house of worship. He felt unworthy that Jesus should come to his house. They said he was deserving. He felt undeserving. Strong faith and great humility are completely compatible. So again, you can have faith to move a mountain, but still be humble enough to say, I'm not worthy. Two features of characters blend in him which do not often meet in such graceful harmony. He won the high opinion of others, and yet he held a low estimation of himself. Again, as I said earlier, those leaders didn't hesitate to go to Jesus and beseech him earnestly. So again, he had earned a level of respect from them, and yet still held himself as, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Your faith will not murder your humility. Your humility will not stab at your faith. But the two will go hand in hand to heaven. The two will go hand in hand to heaven, like a brave brother and a fair sister, the one as bold as a lion, the other meek as a dove, the one rejoicing in Jesus, the other blushing at self. So again, that came from Spurgeon, and it was a blessing to me. I hope that blessed you as well. And as we look at question 7, why did the centurion not feel worthy to have Jesus come to his home? And again, it is quite clear that the centurion knew who Jesus was. He had come to recognize him as the Son of God, whereas most of the Jews had not. For this reason, he expressed the realization that he was not worthy of having Jesus enter his home. We should also recognize, and this is truly amazing too, because Luke doesn't record it, but it's truly amazing that Jesus himself had no qualms about going. While the Jews and especially their leaders exhibited racial limits, Jesus had come for all people, Gentiles as well as Jews. Without hesitation, he went. As we look at explanatory comparisons, which covers verses 7 and 8, and as we look at verse 7, and this is what I truly love. Wherefore neither thought I myself worthy to come unto thee, but say in a word, and my servant shall be healed. So listen, I am not worthy for you to come to my house. I'm not even worthy to come meet you wherever you are. But all you got to do, wherever you are, all you got to do is say the word. That's it. You say the word, and my servant is going to be healed. I believe that all you got to do is say, it is done. And my servant will be healed. And as we look at verse 8, for I am a man, for I also am a man set under authority, having under me soldiers. And I say unto one, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh. And to my servant, do this, and he doeth it. So this is how he rationalized how Jesus could do what he asked him to do. Because again, he's under authority, but he also has people under him. So if he says, hey, listen, I need you to go do this, he knows that it's going to be done. If he says, I need you to go do that, he knows that it's going to be done. If he tells the servant, I need you to do this, he knows that it will be done, and he doesn't have to be there physically to make sure that it gets done. Because the people under him, the people that he has authority over, they're going to do what he said in the manner that he said do. So he's saying to Jesus, Jesus, you have authority over disease, over sickness, over death, over everything. So all you got to do is say, hey, listen, leave this body. And that's it. And so again, as we look at explanatory comparison, the centurion did not even feel worthy of personally entering into Jesus' presence. He knew that all Jesus had to do was say the word, and his servant would be healed. This was a major statement of faith on his part, showing the depth of his understanding of the person of Jesus. Again, Jesus has authority over all things, and he understood that. And the fact that he understood that allowed for him to have faith that if he wanted to, well, it can be done. And he didn't have to be in his house to do so. His comprehension of Jesus' authority came from his own experience with human authority. Again, as I said earlier, he was a highly ranked officer in the Roman army. He understood if I tell somebody to do something, as I said earlier, they're going to do it. Because if they don't do it, well, there's going to be consequences. As we look at question 8, what did the man's description of authority reveal about his understanding of Jesus? And again, his explanation regarding Jesus' power to merely say the word to heal his servant was that he himself was under the authority of someone else. The implication here is that Jesus held ultimate authority over disease, and that diseases were obligated to respond exactly the way that he expected and told them to. So again, if Jesus told that disease to get out of that man's or get out of that woman's body, well, then that's what it was going to do. It wasn't going to sit back and question, well, why am I doing this, Jesus? Well, why? Why do I have to do this? It's the same thing, in his estimation of his chain of command. Lower ranked soldiers don't question when the commanding officer says do something. In just a couple of sentences, this centurion clearly displayed two characteristics of healing faith. One, humility, and two, absolute belief in the power of Jesus to do whatever he desires. There was no sign or sound of demandingness or trying to cajole Jesus into healing his servant. Despite his character, position, and works, he made his request to Jesus with humility. Again, as I said earlier, he could have sent his soldiers. Again, as I said to you all earlier, he had the ability, or he was responsible for their food and their shelter. So if he asked them to do something, they were going to do it, and they were going to carry it out. So he could have said, hey, I need you all to go get this man named Jesus, and I need you all to bring him to me. And then say, hey, listen, I heard what you do. I want you, I heal him. He didn't do that, even though it was in his power to do so. Instead of him doing that, listen, guys, can you do me a solid? Can you go to this man named Jesus? Can you ask him to come and save and heal my servant? You know what? I'm not even worthy. I'm not even worthy of you to come to my house. I'm not even worthy to even be in your presence. Again, here's a man of authority, bowing down to the true authority. As we look at practical point number 3 that covers 6 and 7, we should always approach Jesus in humility and awe. Again, we should always approach Jesus in humility and awe. You don't approach Jesus, with this haughty attitude, like you owe me, and you gonna do this, Jesus. No, because you remember where you were before you met Jesus. You remember where you were before Jesus came into your life, and then once he came into your life, you remember how he changed you, how he turned you into something new, made you a new person, and so you can respond in awe. Or you know that you were in a situation where maybe you were on death's door, or maybe someone you love was on death's door, and you prayed for them, and Jesus brought them through or healed them, and you saw his awesome power. You know it wasn't anything that the doctors did. You know that it wasn't anything that someone else came in at the last second and did to fix that. No, you know that in fact that this was God, that this was Jesus. And so you respond in awe. Our God is an awesome God. As we look at, again, going back into verse 8, he used himself as an illustration of his understanding. He was both under authority and had others under his authority. So he fully comprehended what was expected when a command was given by one with the authority to give it. When a superior gave a command, whether present or not, it was to be carried out without question, as I said earlier. The centurion had a confident faith that Jesus could heal from a distance. Again, he recognized Jesus as a commanding officer, to use a military term. He recognized that Jesus had the authority over this situation, and that all he had to do was speak a word, and that situation would be done. As we look at the practical point for verse 8, recognizing Jesus' authority is a major part of true biblical faith. Again, recognizing Jesus' authority is a major part of true biblical faith. The moment that you realize that Jesus has authority over everything in your life, you're showing true faith. When you're still thinking that you have authority over a situation, when you're still trying to use your own power, well, we know the results. And we know that ultimately what you're saying in that moment is that you don't believe that Jesus or God can do it. So you're going to try to do it yourself. That's ultimately what you're saying in a situation where you are, saying that, well, I got this. Again, when you truly recognize his authority, you are truly showing true biblical faith. Again, as we move into verse 9 and 10, as we look at it and we're closing out, convicting observation is the title with which these verses fall under. And as we look at, verse 9, when Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him and turned him about and said unto the people that followed him, I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. So it is a truly amazing thing that we see in our lesson, right? First, we see a request made for Jesus to heal someone without being physically or being in the building to do so, right? In other instances, we know Jesus was on the scene when he called Lazarus out the tomb. We know Jesus was on the scene when he fed the 5,000. We know Jesus was on the scene when he turned the water into wine. You understand? But in this particular case, the request was made for Jesus to do what he was going to do and not be there. And then also you see him marvel at someone's response. And think about this, folks. Jesus, as I read to you all earlier, what Jesus was doing before preceding this lesson, the calling of the disciples, the giving of the sermons, the teaching, the bringing of the beatitudes, the parables, all of these things that he did, he was trying to get the Jewish people to get to the level of faith that this centurion, who had not sat under Jesus and had not sat under the religious teachers, had not only, all he had was what he heard. And that was enough for him. See, that was the response. That was the response that Jesus was trying to get from the Jewish people. And so he turned to those people and let them know in that moment, wow, this is amazing. I've not seen this nowhere. Period. Throughout my travels with my countrymen, nowhere that I've been have I seen this level of faith. And as we look at verse 10, and they that were sent returned to the house, found the servant whole that had been sick. So again, and we'll get into it as we get into the breakdown, but you don't get to see Jesus actually saying the words, but you see that by the time that the leaders and the friends of the centurion got back to the house, that sick servant, he was whole. I don't know what he was doing. He could have been dancing, shouting for joy, could have been eating, could have been whatever. Just thankful that he no longer has to deal with such a terrible and tormenting disease. And so as we look at convicting observation, the very first thing we're going to do is look at question number 9. What was Jesus' response? Jesus was amazed. He was amazed at this insightful understanding, so much so he marveled. The Greek term used here can carry the nuances of being extraordinarily impressed and feeling great admiration. Finally, someone understood his presence and origin. Again, Jesus, he was extremely impressed at the response of this man. The Jews were supposedly looking for their Messiah, but the faith of this Gentile centurion far surpassed theirs. Jesus had arrived and given many evidences of who he was, but many of them, especially their leaders, still had no faith. Still had no faith because all they wanted was the miracles. All they wanted was the fish and the loaves. All they wanted was the water turned to wine. They didn't want to hear about, the other things that Jesus was bringing. No, they didn't want to hear about that. No, we're good on that. But hey, you got another miracle? Because I can sure use a miracle right now. As we look at, and verse 9 is our golden text, as we said earlier. However, the centurion recognized Christ, something that others did not. First, let's look at this, folks. This man called Jesus Lord. He knew who Jesus was. And I didn't even mention that going back into verse 6, but he even instructed his friends. He even instructed his friends, hey, when you guys get to Jesus, don't respond. Don't just, refer to him as anything. Give him the proper respect. Give him the proper due that his name should carry. Refer to him as Lord. So he referred to Jesus as Lord, which indicate that he knew who Jesus was. Second, he understood his sinful state before a righteous God. Again, as I said, he knew that he wasn't worthy. Unlike the Jews who considered themselves pious, this man acknowledged how undeserving he was to be in Christ's presence. Again, it's something about when you recognize it, right? You don't have to be told. When you recognize, I don't know what I was thinking. If it wasn't for you covering me with your blood, I'd still be a slave to sin right now. However, he also, and this is also important. However, he also understood Christ's great power, right? He did not need Christ to come and put on a show, unlike some who sought for a sign from Christ, John 2:18. This man's faith required only a spoken word. Again, his faith was so strong. You don't have to be here. All you have to do is speak it. I don't even have to see you speaking it. I don't have to hear you speaking it. Just speak it, and wherever you speak it from, it's done. That faith is what caused Christ to speak so highly of this foreigner. This centurion believed with absolute conviction that a single word from Jesus could heal even a fatal illness. He was utterly certain of Christ's authority. There was no quibbling, no trace of doubt in his request. He was convinced that all he needed was to come and ask sincerely for that healing. Again, he didn't care what the situation looked like. He, while he was humble and didn't want to, cause any unnecessary headache or heartache for Jesus, he still, he still understood. Listen, all you gotta do is say it. All you gotta do is say it. That's it. That's all I need. And again, that's the kind of faith that we should have. As I said in the senior video, we as Christians shouldn't see outsiders, right? Because even non-believers sometimes have moments where they have faith in a situation. They don't necessarily believe, or they may not necessarily be following the tenets, but their faith in a situation is stronger than yours as a Christian. That should never happen. Should never happen. You should never have your faith beat out by someone who doesn't know, hasn't walked with, hasn't been tested. It shouldn't happen. As we look at practical point number 5, which covers verse 9, nothing delights our Lord so much as genuine faith in him. We'll say it again. Nothing delights our Lord so much as genuine faith in him. The centurion said, it doesn't matter where you are, just speak it, and I believe it's going to be done. Simple as that. And as we go back and look at verse 10, Jesus had honored the centurion's faith by immediately restoring the servant's health. It was obvious that Jesus was not impressed that someone was a Jew or held a position of religious leadership or exercised political authority. The only thing that mattered, the only thing that truly mattered to him was simple faith. Specifically, the ability to believe that Jesus is who he said he is and that God will do what he says. And as we look at question 10, what should the centurion's example challenge us to do? And I'll tell you what it should challenge us to do. The only way that we can develop such an enduring faith in God is through getting to know him intimately. And that comes through being in his word and doing it. Praying. You got to have a relationship with him. You can't not have a relationship with him and think that your faith is going to be built to the level where this centurion's faith was. Listen, and if you do that, if you read your scriptures, if you pray earnestly, you develop that relationship, you won't doubt when the hard times come. And trust me, they're going to come. Nobody goes through this life unscathed. Hard times are going to come. The question is, how are you going to deal with it when it shows up? And again, if your faith is to the level of that centurion's, well, all you got to do, God, speak a word in it. And it's done. And guess what? Even if you don't, I know that you can. And so I can stand on that. And so if I'm going through something, it's probably because this is a test. And it's probably designed to strengthen my faith and to get me from one place to another place. Matthew, and for those of you that are familiar, you're going to know this verse when I say it. But for those of you that haven't heard it, this verse here is truly a blessing, because look at what Matthew records. Matthew recorded the Lord's commendation of this man's faith. As thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. I'm going to say it again. As thou hast believed, so be it done unto thee. Jesus is like, you believe, it's done. Just because you believe, and you believe so strongly, it's done unto thee. The thing that you asked for, done. We gone down to, we can resume what we were doing before we got stopped by these leaders. Because this thing is done. That man is healed. Do you have a need? Do you have a need for healing? Take it to Jesus. The centurion believed, and his servant was restored with a word. Wasn't some doctor came in, wasn't some, soothsayer, magician. No, it was the word of Jesus that brought that man back to full health. Take it to him being confident that he is the great physician, Jehovah Rapha, our healer, the one who is able to heal even the direst case if you ask in faith. Again, he has authority over everything, even death and sin. So he has authority over sickness and disease. The whole narrative reminds us that faith healing is neither demanding nor proud, and it is not wavering. Rather, it stands firmly in the ability of Jesus to do anything that he wills to do. Again, God's will, not yours. Resting in his choice about if and when he does it. Again, you don't get mad if it doesn't happen in the exact time frame that you want it to happen. Again, often God doesn't operate in our time frame. And speaking of, as we look at practical point number 6, Jesus' timing and meeting our needs is always perfect, even if we prefer a different time frame. I'm going to say it again. Jesus' timing and meeting our needs is always perfect. He is a right on time God. Even if we would prefer a different time frame. And again, if you want things done on your time, it's not gonna benefit you. Because again, sometimes the answer is not no. Sometimes the answer is you need to wait. I haven't seasoned you enough yet. And as we illustrate this lesson, and we're closing out, we should pray and have faith in the Lord's ability to heal. Again, we should pray and have faith in the Lord's ability to heal. Listen, there is an elder at my church right now, and this mighty man of God has had his share of challenges. And yet you will find him, if you come to my local assembly, you will find him in the first pew, moving and grooving as if he did when he was a younger man. Still, God has healed him and brought him back from the precipice. So again, I know, and I've seen it. I've seen God heal. If you've got genuine faith, if you believe earnestly, God can do anything. And so as we close out, I want to thank you all for watching these videos. I want to thank you all. This has been we started in May. This has been a tremendous opportunity for myself to bring these lessons to you all. I truly hope that it's blessing you. I truly hope that you all are using these lessons and putting these practical points into your daily lives. You're using these points throughout your daily lives. I pray that you all are, growing. I love the fact that you all are sharing, that you all are watching again these videos. Please keep it up. You know, we love it when you guys hit the like button. I love it when you guys tell your friends and family about these Sunday school videos. Continue to share. And again, as we normally do, as we close out, for those of you that have watched this video who do not know the Lord as your personal Savior, heaven is ready right now. God is ready to seal your name in the Lamb's Book of Life. He's ready to give you hope. He's ready to give you a new life. All you have to do, listen, again, as you heard me say before, you don't have to, there's not some crazy ritual that you got to do. There's no cutting. There's no, sacrificing of your firstborn child. None of that. All you have to do is believe in your heart. Confess with your tongue. Believe that Jesus died, that he was buried, that he rose again after 3 days, defeating death for all time, that he's right now on the right hand of God, interceding on our behalf, marveling, if you will, in those things that we do in life that cause him to marvel at our faith. That is waiting for you. All you have to do is reach out and take it. All you have to do is accept. That's it. And once you accept, God will breathe new life into you. You will get a new spirit. The old you will die. That you that was an enemy, that you that was, again, a child of the devil, all that'll be gone. All you have to do is believe. And so with that said, I want to thank you all again. I just want to thank you all for everything. We give all honor and glory to God, but I appreciate everything that you all have done as far as advancing this channel. And until the next time, we'll see you all back again on the corner, JMG Corner Ministries. Until next time, God bless.